The morning mist hung over the Kenyan savannah like a soft gray blanket when Tom Sullivan heard the gunshots echoing across the plains. He had been working as a wildlife ranger for 12 years, but the sound of poachers' rifles still made his heart race with anger and fear. Tom grabbed his radio and called for backup, then started his Jeep and drove toward the sound, knowing that somewhere out there, another innocent animal was fighting for its life. Tom was different from most rangers. He had come to Africa not for adventure or money, but because he had lost his way in life back home in Colorado. After his father died in a car accident, Tom couldn't find meaning in his old job as a mechanic. Africa had given him purpose, and now he spent his days protecting the animals that had saved his soul. As he drove through the tall grass, Tom's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. He had seen too many animals killed by poachers. Elephants, murdered for their tusks, rhinos slaughtered for their horns, and lions poisoned because they threatened cattle. Each death felt personal to Tom, like losing a member of his own family. The gunshots had stopped, which meant the poachers were either gone or had finished their deadly work. Tom followed the tire tracks in the soft earth, his heart sinking with each mile. He knew he was probably too late, but he had to try. Even if he couldn't save the animal, he could at least make sure the poachers faced justice. 20 minutes later, Tom found what he was looking for, and it broke his heart. A massive male lion lay motionless beside a waterhole, his magnificent, golden mane stained with blood. The lion was huge, probably the leader of his pride, with scars on his face that told stories of many battles. Tom could see that the poachers had tried to cut off the lion's paws and face, body parts that some people believed had magical powers. Tom stopped his Jeep 50 meters away and watched through his binoculars. The lion wasn't moving, and Tom assumed he was looking at another victim of the illegal wildlife trade that was destroying Africa's animal populations. But as he watched, something made him look closer. If you're moved by stories like this about the incredible bond between humans and wildlife, you'll find many more here that will touch your heart. Your support helps us share these important tales of conservation and hope. Tom saw the lion's chest rise and fall, barely, but it was breathing. The great cat was still alive, but just barely. Tom knew he had to act fast, but approaching a wounded lion, even a dying one, was extremely dangerous. Lions could attack with their last breath, and Tom had no way of knowing how badly this one was hurt. Tom radioed for the wildlife vet, Dr. Sarah Chen, who worked with the conservation team. But she was 3 hours away helping elephants in another part of the reserve. The lion didn't have 3 hours. It probably didn't have 30 minutes. Tom made a decision that went against all his training but felt right in his heart. He got out of his Jeep and walked slowly toward the dying lion. Each step felt like it took forever. Tom could see the lion's wounds more clearly now. Bullet holes in his shoulder and leg, cuts from the poacher's knives, and worst of all, signs that he had been poisoned. The lion's breathing was shallow and labored, and his golden eyes were cloudy with pain. When Tom was 10 feet away, the lion's head lifted slightly. Those cloudy eyes focused on Tom, and for a moment, the two looked at each other across the space that separated predator from human. Tom expected to see anger or fear, but instead he saw something that shocked him. The lion looked almost grateful that someone had come. Tom knelt down in the dust and spoke softly to the dying king of beasts. "Hey there, big guy. I'm here to help. I know you're hurt, and I know you're scared, but you're not alone anymore." The lion's ear twitched at the sound of Tom's voice, and his breathing seemed to become slightly less labored. Tom had some emergency medical supplies in his Jeep. Bandages, pain medicine for animals, and clean water. He knew it probably wouldn't be enough to save the lion, but he had to try. As he worked to clean the wounds and stop the bleeding, Tom kept talking to the lion, telling him about his life, about why he had come to Africa, about how sorry he was that humans had done this to him. The strangest thing happened as Tom worked. The lion seemed to relax. His massive head rested on Tom's knee, and his breathing became deeper and more regular. It was as if the lion understood that this human was different, that Tom was there to help, not hurt. For 2 hours, Tom sat in the dust beside the wounded lion, sharing his water and trying to keep the great cat comfortable. The sun climbed higher, in the sky, and Tom began to worry that help would come too late. The lion was getting weaker, and Tom could see that death was approaching. Then Tom heard the sound of vehicles approaching. Dr. Chen had arrived with her medical team and supplies. Tom felt a surge of hope as the veterinarian jumped out of her truck and ran toward them, carrying a large medical bag. Dr. Chen was a small woman with gentle hands and a heart full of love for African wildlife. She had saved hundreds of animals during her years in Kenya, but when she saw the lion's condition, Tom could see the worry in her eyes. "He's been poisoned," she said, after examining the lion. "The bullets missed his vital organs, but the poison is shutting down his system. We need to get him to the clinic immediately if there's any chance of saving him." Loading a 400-pound lion into a truck would normally require tranquilizer darts and special equipment, but this lion was too weak to fight. Tom and the medical team carefully lifted him onto a stretcher and into the back of the medical truck. Tom climbed in beside the lion, continuing to speak softly and stroke his mane during the bumpy ride to the wildlife clinic. At the clinic, Dr. Chen worked frantically to save the lion's life. She gave him medicine to fight the poison, fluids to help his kidneys, and antibiotics to prevent infection. Tom stayed by the lion's side through it all, holding his massive paw and whispering encouragement. For 3 days, the lion hung between life and death. Sometimes he seemed to be getting better, and Tom's heart would fill with hope. Other times his breathing would become so shallow that Tom thought they had lost him. Through it all, Tom never left the lion's side, sleeping on a cot next to the medical table and taking his meals in the treatment room. On the 3rd night, something changed. The lion's breathing became stronger, and his eyes cleared for the first time since Tom had found him. When Tom spoke, the lion turned his head toward the sound, and Tom could swear he saw recognition in those golden eyes. Dr. Chen was amazed by the lion's recovery. "I've never seen anything like it," she told Tom. "Lions are tough, but this one should have died from the amount of poison in his system. It's like he had a reason to keep fighting, like something was keeping him alive." Tom knew what that something was. It was the connection that had formed between them beside the water hole. The lion had decided to trust a human, and that trust had given him the strength to fight for his life. Over the next 2 weeks, the lion continued to recover. His wounds healed, his strength returned, and his magnificent roar echoed through the clinic. Dr. Chen said it was time to make a difficult decision. The lion was healthy enough to be released back into the wild, but they weren't sure he would be accepted back by his pride after being away for so long. Tom knew this moment would come, but it still broke his heart. He had spent every day with the lion, and a deep bond had formed between them. The lion would rest his huge head on Tom's lap, and Tom would tell him stories about the life waiting for him back in the wild. But Tom also knew that the lion belonged in the savannah, not in a clinic. The day of the release, Tom drove the transport truck to the same area where he had found the dying lion. Dr. Chen had chosen a spot near the territory where his pride had been spotted, giving him the best chance of reuniting with his family. As they opened the transport cage, Tom's heart pounded with emotion. The lion stepped out slowly, testing his legs and breathing the familiar sense of home. He looked around, at the acacia trees, the distant mountains, and the endless grassland that was his kingdom. Then the lion did something that Tom would remember for the rest of his life. He turned around and looked directly at Tom, and their eyes met one last time. In that moment, Tom saw something incredible. The lion was saying goodbye, and he was saying thank you. What happened next sent chills down Tom's spine and brought tears to his eyes. The lion threw back his magnificent head and let out a roar that shook the ground and echoed across the plains. But this wasn't a roar of pain or anger. It was a roar of life, of strength, of gratitude. It was the sound of a king reclaiming his throne. The roar seemed to go on forever, rolling across the savannah like thunder. It was so powerful that birds flew out of trees miles away, and other animals stopped what they were doing to listen. Tom felt the sound in his chest, in his bones, in his soul. It was the most beautiful and powerful sound he had ever heard. But the lion wasn't finished. As his roar faded, Answering roars came from different directions across the plains. First, one, then another, then several more. The lion's pride was calling back to him, welcoming their leader home. They had been waiting for him, and now they knew he was alive and strong. The lion looked at Tom one more time, then bounded away toward the sound of his family's voices. Tom watched through tears as the magnificent animal disappeared into the tall grass, running strong and free toward his destiny. 3 months later, Tom was patrolling the same area when he saw something that filled his heart with joy. The lion was there, healthy and strong, leading his pride to a waterhole. He had 3 cubs playing around his feet, and a lioness walked beside him with obvious love and respect. The lion had not only survived, he was thriving. When the lion saw Tom's jeep, he stopped and looked in Tom's direction. Even from a distance, Tom could feel that connection they had shared. The lion let out a soft chuff, a friendly greeting that lions use with family members. Then he continued on his way, leading his pride to water and safety. Tom learned something important from that experience. He learned that sometimes saving one life can change everything, not just for the animal, but for the person doing the saving. The lion had given Tom a sense of purpose that he had never felt before, and Tom had given the lion a second chance at life. From that day forward, Tom threw himself into anti-poaching work with new energy and determination. He helped train local rangers, worked with communities to find alternatives to poaching, and established programs to protect wildlife across the region. Every time he felt discouraged, he remembered the sound of that grateful roar echoing across the plains. The lion lived for many more years, becoming legendary in the area for his strength and wisdom. Local people called him Simba wa Misha, the Lion of Life, because his story had inspired so many conservation efforts. His pride grew and prospered, and his cubs grew up to become leaders of their own prides. Tom eventually became the head ranger for the entire region, but he never forgot the lesson the lion had taught him. Every life matters. Every creature deserves respect and protection, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply show up when someone needs help. Years later, Tom would tell visitors about the day he found a dying lion and heard a roar that changed everything. He would explain that conservation isn't just about protecting animals. It's about recognizing that we're all connected, that we all share this beautiful planet, and that we all have a responsibility to take care of each other. The roar that day wasn't just a sound. It was a message. It was the lion's way of saying that life is precious, that hope can survive even in the darkest moments, and that sometimes the most unlikely friendships can create miracles. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of hope, healing, and the unbreakable bond between humans and wildlife. Stories like Tom's remind us that every act of kindness matters, every life is worth saving, and that sometimes the most powerful sound in the world is the roar of a life given back its chance to thrive.